Dude, I'm so excited to have you
Yeah,
here.
this would be great. This is really cool. I'm excited.
And we'll keep this informal. You let us know when you're rolling, by the way, whenever you guys want. But dude, I'm so excited to have you here. It's so funny. I think I noticed your Instagram even before we met, like years before.
Yeah, because that was back, what,
Yeah, through
2018?
beautiful
Yeah,
destinations.
yeah. Oh, no,
Yeah,
earlier than then,
earlier. Yeah, yeah,
2016, because I was a BD until 2017. So yeah,
yeah.
2016, I think.
And I feel,
Crazy.
and dude, that's almost 10 years,
It's
right?
wild.
And I'm just so curious to know, like, let's go beyond 2016 in the past. Like,
Yeah.
when did you first pick up a camera? Like,
When I first became,
where did this come from? This, because I don't think you, I think it's like skill and a little bit of like natural ability to
yeah.
understand aesthetic and all that. It's so amazing. I'd love to understand where that came from.
It's a really interesting question because I think I was thinking about this not too long ago, trying to like understand something I've been focusing on recently is figuring out how can I really 10x everything I'm doing. And one of the things they tell you to do when you look at thinking about 10xing everything is looking back from your earliest 10x moments.
Mm,
And that can be from when you're a child and you first learn to write. Like that's a 10x jump. Like you've suddenly unlocked this whole new skill set. And then when you learn to do these different things, I learned to ride a bike. I learned to then pick up a camera. And that was this 10x moment when I picked up a camera and I was like, wow, this is my
I
thing.
love that.
And so that was when I first picked up a camera when I was 15. I was in school, and for me at school, I wasn't bad at school, but I wasn't excelling in
And where
in
was this?
anything. This is in the UK, so I grew up in London.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just wasn't excelling at anything. I was fine in I liked geography. I kind of liked art, and art when you're at school is like you do a week doing textiles, then you do a week doing this thing, and you kind of like dabble in
Yeah.
everything. There's no
Yeah.
real like focus on something. And at that point, I hadn't picked up a camera, so I basically tail end of secondary school, which is kind of like, I think you guys call I get confused what they call it in the
Yeah.
US. But I'm like 15, 16, pick up a camera. I'm so like, wow, this is cool. Like I like this. This is really fun. Like it's I don't know what clicked inside of me, but I just started really enjoying it. And it was then my decision to what I do at college, which is 16 to 18 for us in the UK. And I'm like, I'm gonna do one of my 4 subjects as photography. The
Hmm.
other were, I don't know why I picked chemistry and I don't know why I picked psychology.
Yeah.
2 things that I ended up not being
Yeah.
very good at, at least during college. But photography was this standout thing where suddenly I felt like my teachers were like, "Oh, like you're good at this," and for me, I felt like, "Oh, I feel like I'm excelling at something," and it was a new feeling for me to previously like in education not feeling that. So I wanted to pursue it, and simultaneously to this whole timeline, Instagram was like its earliest days. Instagram was maybe a year old. It was getting a little bit of conversation in England because obviously it was a little bit behind. It came out in the US and then made it across to Europe. So around that similar time, everyone had started their Instagram accounts. And I was like, I'd seen 1 or 2 people and they were just posting photography. And that to me, that was like a standout different thing. Like most people posting, photos of their cats or their food or whatever that might be. And a couple of these people were posting photos of their professional photography. And I thought it was really interesting. So simultaneously, like I started my account and I just posted stuff that I was creating. And for me, I spent the first 2 years of taking photos at night. I loved going out in the middle of the night. Like I would finish school, I would do my homework, maybe catch up with a friend, and then I kid you not, at like 9 or 10 p.m., I would go into London and I would just walk around the city with my camera and take photos at night. Was obsessed with long exposures, essentially like, you have the shutter open for 10, 20, 30
And that's
seconds.
helpful at night, right?
Yeah,
To
and
find that.
then you
Yeah.
capture
Yeah.
like the cars coming past and the lights moving or like
Mm.
these different things moving. And for me, one part was getting to explore my city, and the second part was just like being out and being with my camera. I felt like I just was like uncovering something that like other people hadn't. I was finding these perspectives and views, and I'd always been interested in buildings. I liked architecture. There was part of me that liked the thought of being an architect, but the mathematics
Like
and
the
to
visual
it,
design of
yeah,
it.
the
Yeah.
design aspect, yes. The mathematics and the other side of it, not for me. So it's like I think photography allowed me to look at this world and my city in a totally new way, and I was able to kind of like bring those bits together. So that's kind of where it started.
So before you jump into where that took you, because I know then you have an amazing run
Just went.
of, yes. Where did you draw, like at 16, 17? I mean, were your peer groups doing other things outside of their 4, qualified subjects? Was it like you drawing inspiration from some famous photographer or just like going to the museum? Like, where did you draw your sense of like ability to be like, hey, this camera is going to change my life and I'm going to go follow that pursuit or passion? Because I think that's usually the inflection point of
Yep.
making a really critical decision when typically until like after college, you don't have to break out from the norm because it's so easy to just fit in. Okay, 16, end of grade school, we call it, high school, whatever it is. You're going 12th grade to college for 4 years.
You have this set plan and you
Yeah.
don't really think outside of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
What
that
was what
was
was the inspiration for that? Or maybe it was self,
yeah, it's
internal.
interesting. So my friends, like everyone did their thing. You know, you finish school, you go and hang out, you go to a party, you do the typical things you do when you're younger. Like I went to significantly less parties and events because I was with my camera. Like I chose that over doing it, and it was more instinctual. Like there wasn't like a path that I was following at that point. I was like, this is fun. I'm enjoying it. Like I want to
It's almost like
pursue
an
it.
obsession.
Like I was like,
Yeah.
this is great. Like I'm going out. I'm feeling excited to like try different things, learn different things. This like creative bug in me that I think was always there. Like I always like I my mom and dad reminded me of this, but like I spent every single day when we were like on road trips or like in the summer and driving to places or going on holiday, I would be looking out the window. Like I wouldn't be doing anything else but like pointing shit out to my parents. Like I
Yeah.
was like, look at this, look at this cloud, look at this mountain. Like, and they're like, obviously, like, oh, cool, yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
But I was just looking at the world. So then I think I had this opportunity to then capture
Capture
it,
it.
and that
Yeah.
was this like,
Yeah.
well, I
It's
just want to
awesome.
keep doing it. So that really fueled, and I think that difference for me of like early on, like putting the effort into a skill, like put me on a different path instantly.
Mhm.
Like I then got a job because I knew I wanted to improve the camera gear I had. And I was like, cool, I need to fund this. I'm going to get a job. I got a job at a bike shop, servicing bikes and selling like bikes. And simultaneously, I worked at a supermarket, literally filleting fish and working behind a fish and meat counter with a little like net on my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
I wish I had a photo of it, but I can't
Yeah.
find one. And so like these two things funded that. So I was like working, doing school, doing those jobs, going out and taking photos, and like my time was filled. And I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Like I had a really good friend group. Like I felt like I've always, and even now, like been in multiple friendship groups. I
Mhm.
didn't have this like one core group of people that was it. And I didn't connect with anyone else. Like I was kind of like in with this group of people. And then I had like this other group of people, at school, there's always like
Yeah. Yeah.
little
Clicks.
cliques of
Yeah.
people. Like I was in multiple of those cliques. And then it's like, I think, so I didn't feel like I was really missing out because I kind of had my foot in
You
different
had
places
access.
anyway.
Just like me.
Um,
Yeah.
and that was it. It was this moment where I was like, wow, I really get to capture the world that I've been so interested in for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I instantly found my niche in photography very quickly. It wasn't taking photos of people necessarily or like subjects at that time or, doing the idea of doing weddings. No, it was like
Mhm.
buildings. And then that innately went to travel further down the line.
Yeah, and I think you nailed something that it's usually difficult to come across until you go. Sometimes people have to go into a low point to figure this piece out, but I think you nailed understanding what energizes you really early because
Absolutely.
like you can manufacture energy too, right? You
Yep.
can be like, "Oh, I'm good at taking tests in high school and I'm good at whatever chemistry, psychology, whatever it is." And you almost like use that as manufactured energy to be like, "I need to go into this field."
Yeah.
Like look at this. I'm good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's proof of
Yeah.
concept. I'm going to go do
But you
X.
were
Yeah.
you were more intuitive in saying like, "Holy shit," like what you just described of having full days and weeks working, trying to work a second, third job to fulfill this passion and then still feeling energized.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, and I mean,
that's different.
I was
Yeah.
it was that excitement that made me, and I know that carried for so many years beyond. Like the
Today,
lack of
right? I
sleep,
feel
yeah,
like you haven't even
like
lost an ounce of
the
like
lack of
excitement.
sleep that
Yeah.
I sustained for so long because I was like out with my camera. And it wasn't because I was out drinking or out partying. I was like up
It's
for
incredible.
every sunrise for years, shooting every sunset, editing photos through the night, then back up for sunrise. Like that was beautiful destinations, which we'll get to. But like
Yeah.
that was like I wasn't tired. Like I didn't
Yeah.
feel like I was like, oh, this is draining. It was like, no, this is giving me energy. It was
Yeah.
energizing.
And your parents were super supportive.
Parents, like, I think that was a massive part of it that, they always wanted me to excel at school. And I think there was part of me, and I've been working through this, that never felt smart enough. And I think I compared myself to my older sister, who I felt
Mm.
was really smart. She was getting top grades. Then my younger sister was getting like top grades. And I just felt like I wasn't quote unquote smart. But like,
Mhm.
what is smart, right? Like, it's like you are instantly at school are told that like your grades being at a level make you smart. But then I was like learning a skill, but in my head, like that at the time, that skill didn't make me smart. So there was still this underlying feeling that I wasn't
Good enough
good
for
enough.
yeah, yeah,
And so I
yeah.
think there was that drive as well. But then that drive, you know, eventually goes into negative self-talk and like it becomes harder on you. And then
Yeah.
I do think it serves a purpose. Like I know that maybe negativity towards myself propelled me to work harder. But then
That's
innately
so
there's
funny
going
you
to be
say. It's almost this drive
there's a
and
drive for
it's
sure. There's the
manufactured.
energy
Yeah.
that you get from it, but then because I didn't feel enough or smart enough in my head, even though I totally was,
Yeah.
I was just telling myself this story. Then suddenly it's like that drive and the negativity I held towards myself. And fuck, I'm sure like maybe you haven't, but like it's so easy to talk negatively to yourself.
Mhm.
It's so easy to get
It
yourself in
takes
that
less
trap.
effort.
Yeah, it's like to be nasty to yourself. It's just like it's so quick and
Yeah.
instantaneous. It's often scary, and to like flip it to be kind to yourself takes a lot of courage, I think. And it's been a process for me over the course of probably the more recent 3 to 4 years
Mhm.
of like shifting that and realizing there's way more future potential for me.
Absolutely, and I wanna get to that
We'll
because
get
I
there.
know
Yeah.
you no, because I know you actually recently posted, whether it was on Instagram or something, I saw you kind of opened up about it, so
Yeah. Yeah. I've
I'm
had
super excited to hear about
a
that.
journey.
Where did so that inflection point of beautiful destinations, you started doing a lot of travel photography,
Yeah.
videography. Where do those next 5 to 10 years take you, and how do you come to this table today, and kinda what makes you great? Yeah, what's
I love that. So to backtrack a little bit, the decision for me was, do I go to university or what do I do? And at
Mhm.
that point it was, I'm going to go do a degree in photography at university. Like I didn't have necessarily another option. I had maybe 100,000 followers on Instagram, 80,000 followers. I had a big audience as a photographer on Instagram at the time. I'd taken a gap year, which had, because of my grades, quote unquote, weren't good enough to go to
Mhm.
university, taken a gap year to do some additional kind of like courses for credits while I was working at the time, taking photos. And then I got to the end of that gap year and I was like, I didn't travel, and everyone travels on their gap year. So it's like, I'll take another one and go to uni after that. I had the points at that time
Yep.
to go. Took another one, went traveling, like went to Asia, did Australia, did this like kind of classic gap year travel, was taking photos the whole time. Instagram was, booming for me. Beautiful destinations simultaneously, travel account, posting amazing content was also growing. And I had connected with Jeremy and Tom, the
Yep.
founders of it, kind of through my Instagram, and they were sharing my photos and stuff like that. So then I got back from traveling. It's like, it was kind of like December, it was around my birthday. And that next summer was like essentially when I was going to go to university. I had to make the decision by maybe April. And in February, things just weren't feeling right. I was like, I don't know if I should go. What? I'm going to get a degree in photography to tell me I'm creative. Like it didn't click.
Mhm.
Something just didn't feel like that was going to be the right path. And like maybe a week after I'd kind of decided I didn't want to go, but didn't have an option, like Jeremy calls me from Beautiful Destinations. He's like, hey, like I have a job offer for you. I'm like,
Nice.
there's three of us working at Beautiful Destinations. We're all co-founders. Like, I want you to join as our community manager, run our Instagram accounts, you get social media, yeah, community management didn't sound like an opportunity that was like a thing that I wanted to do, but I knew what they were doing. And I was like, anything
To get you
to
in the
get in
door.
that door to do it, fuck yeah, I'm in. So I said yes to Jeremy and I turned down university. And I remember this moment so distinctly because I had this meeting with Jeremy. I like called my mom and dad on the way back and I'm like, he's just offered me a job. Like, this is insane. Like, I'm so excited. I was 20. And I remember driving across towards Big Ben across Westminster Bridge, and they were filming the scene with Daniel Craig in one of the James Bond movies, and he stood on the bridge next to this burning plane. It was like so surreal. Like I have this, and it's like literally I'm on the call to him. I'm like,
While
Jeremy
you're
offered me a job, and I'm like, there's Daniel Craig's on the bridge. Like it's like it was super weird. I was a big James Bond fan,
yeah.
and so
Well,
like
that's
this whole
exciting.
anyway.
Yeah.
So I joined Beautiful Destinations, joined as this community manager, and for 3 years I was there. I shifted away from community management probably like 6 months in because I realized my management skills of like making sure 6 accounts get content posted on them 4 times a day was like not my speciality.
Yeah.
But we quickly realized the biggest value that Beautiful Destinations can bring is is creating content for brands. It's like we're already doing it and sharing other people's content. Why doesn't Beautiful Destinations become a creative agency that can service the needs of the tourism board industry, the
Hmm.
hotel industry, create content, create campaigns for brands, leverage it on Beautiful Destinations to push that content, and also build out libraries
Brilliant.
for brands.
Yeah.
So for 3 years, myself and a couple of others, Sam Calder and I know Langer, and a few,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
some of my closest friends that I built over that period, traveled for 300 days a year. And this is where like the lack of sleep, I didn't even phase me. Like you
Yeah.
land back I moved to New York, landed back like from the Philippines. And then next week I go to Abu Dhabi, come back from Abu Dhabi, and I'd end up in the Galapagos Islands. And it was just like this, like back to back to back to
Yeah.
back. It was
It's like a
insane.
touring
And that
artist.
was when I met
Probably more
you at
intense.
that
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
like in New York. And it was
Yeah.
just like, it was such a surreal time. It was like everything that I'd kind of said, 3 years at university, I can do that. But what else could I do in 3 years? If I choose to do Beautiful Destinations, I've got 3 years that I would have been at university. Let me see how far I can take it. And by that point, it was weirdly timing, like really weirdly well timed, that by the end of that 3 years that would have been uni, it was literally the time I was hanging out my boots at Beautiful Destinations, where I just felt this point where I was like, I feel like I've given everything I can to someone else's company. And I love what I do, but I feel like I'm building someone else's big dream. And I don't think that's what I'm built for. I like had this feeling that there was more that I could be doing for my own personal brand. And at the time I had a bigger audience, I 500,000 followers at that point. I was getting job offers for campaigns that were the same size as my salary. And I wasn't allowed to do them because there was conflict of interest. So it just felt like this turning point where I was like, it's scary to leave and leave the comfort of a job, security, all of that. But like, there's more I can be doing.
Yeah.
So
Does it get better was the question,
yeah,
right?
and that
it does.
curiosity, like
Yeah.
I was like, it's scary, but I need to see, I need to do it. So that was 2017, end of 2017, and I left Beautiful Destinations, and what felt like the next move for me and the way everyone was Bali. Bali was this spot, obviously in Indonesia, where at the time was just this creative hub of travel influencers and YouTubers moving out to a tropical island and just living there. So I thought, fuck it, I'll move to Bali. So left BD, moved to Bali, and for kind of until just before COVID, I was in Bali. And I think initially, I know it's a bit of a long story, so I'm just kind of like, I think initially I felt like I would leave BD and just like start something like BD and like go straight into this new business opportunity. But I noticed actually when I look back on it, I kind of really fell into this like, cool, I have a big audience. I can go do cool trips, hang out with friends. And I feel like I cruised for a little bit. And I don't think I didn't put any less effort into my work, but I don't think I really like grabbed the opportunity as much as maybe I could have in other ways from a business perspective. And I think I just didn't really have the skill set at that time. So I was doing amazing things. I was launching online courses, going on amazing trips, but it was still just me. I didn't have a team. I didn't have anyone around me that was doing it. I was very much like a creator by myself.
Yeah.
And I think that helped me kind of like then get to a point where I was like, that evolution away from working for someone to working for myself, but by myself, then was like, okay, cool, I've done that. Now I really need to see the value of having a team around me.
What was your North Star because it's easy to have a North Star when you're operating under a company and the founder has a North Star and you're like, okay, this is beautiful destinations. Our goal is to provide amazing content, travel, tourism, etc. You go off on your own. You've almost doubled, tripled your follower engagement count, all of that. Were you just straight up like passion? Like, I just want to keep building. Was there a North Star? Were there goals of like, hey, I'm going to spend X amount of time growing my following. I'm going to spend X amount of time exploring new ideas in film and photography? Or was it just like, I just want to build Jacob Media?
Well, so at the time, Jacob Media was kind of like this, just me. It was my thing. It was kind of the company I ran my business, my jobs through and stuff. So I think there was, when I left, I was like, I knew there was part of me that wanted to start teaching. I felt like I had like a really good understanding of obviously of photography, of Instagram, of understanding that. So I wanted to launch an online course. That was initially the thing that I wanted to do. Jobs were coming in. This was like peak Instagram travel influencing time, like 2017, 18, 19. Like I didn't have to do any outreach whatsoever to brands. It was like every week you would have new brands jumping into my inbox saying, hey, we have a job for you. Hey, we have this. Fly here, do this. It was honestly
Was that just
insane.
by looking at your work?
Yeah. It was that Instagram was the
Your
portfolio.
portfolio.
Email in my bio.
Yeah.
like brands were like getting excited by influencers. And then travel brands were like, oh, wow, we have these people that
Mm.
create content that we are paying, traditional photographers for that don't have an audience, blah, blah, blah. Like, we want these people. So that was happening, and I was getting all these jobs, but the teaching aspect I was really curious about. And so I launched an online course. I called it the Photography Masterclass, and it was a full deep dive into who I was as a photographer, how I did what I did, and literally how someone else can do it too. And I loved it. I thought it was great. We hosted some in-person workshops. We did some other bits like that. But I think,
Is that more tactical? Just because I've never actually obviously taken one of those courses,
yeah,
but I've seen you talk about it. I've seen some other amazing people who are like industry experts at their own field launch these types of courses. Is that more tactical? Is it more like, hey, hands-on camera work, or is it like, hey, this is, and I don't want to devalue, but hey, this is how you make it look better online, your picture.
both. It was everything. I had maybe 15 in the field videos that were like 45 minutes each. And it was like someone filming me while I'm at a location, and I'm literally walking through settings while I'm shooting, how I'm shooting it. And then the same video would then go, or separate video would then go into the editing. These photos that I shot, and I would give everyone the raw images so they could edit, while they were watching the course. Here's exactly how you edit these and the things that I do that are unique to my creative process.
Mm.
So I I mean, it was super comprehensive. I don't think at that point there was another photography course out there that was as comprehensive as what I put into that course. And it crushed. It did amazing. For me, revenue-wise, it was incredible. But I also enjoyed this element of teaching. Now, looking back, I should have done it very differently. I promised a lifetime community and course access forever, and like all these things that in my head were like, yeah, of
Of
course.
course you'll do it.
Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
obviously
yeah.
with zero business acumen of like thinking about the future in 5 years time, when I get an email, like now, which is best part of 8 years later, I have an email say, hey, like I bought your course in 2018, like I can't log in and the communities, and I'm just like, wow, like I really, I promise. So it's like, in hindsight, I would have done things differently, but that was a big part of like leaving BD, and during that time was exploring some of these things that had been on my mind to execute on them and build out these ideas. And I guess at the time, like I didn't really have a roadmap of where it would go.
Yeah.
And I think that all caught up with me as COVID hit. And I was like, on this kind of trajectory. And then 2019, travel, everything, boom. Had some relationship issues, but like the world shut down. And obviously, as someone in the travel space, part of me was like, this is great. I get guilt-free time off.
Mhm.
But then I think something very much changed during that period. And it was the shift from everyone loving photography to video becoming the hero
Mm.
product of
So
social
true.
media.
Yeah.
It had this dramatic shift. And I had always only been a photographer. So suddenly I'm like, wow, I feel like
Is
this,
that when TikTok ended up starting to take
Vine was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crushing. I think
Like 2021. Yeah.
TikTok was 2020. That time was
Yeah,
like
that's
it was
what
really popping off. So like with Instagram early days, I jumped on Instagram early days. I jumped on TikTok straight away, and I was like, cool. How do I show my photography in a video format, essentially? And I quickly built an audience, maybe
so
600,000
there's a key
followers.
lesson
And
that
like
you literally pivoted
I
as soon
did,
as you saw that.
but I still something didn't click right. Like I felt, and I posted about this, and it might have been the post that you're referencing, from 2020 to 20 halfway through 2022, maybe early 2023, like I felt in a way confused as to where I was at. I felt a little lost.
Mm.
And I think I think I'd had this amazing run of just building this audience, amazing engagement, amazing brands, like everything focused on photography. Like I think a lot of my worth I put in the value of my following, and like if people commented nice things, and like I really held a lot of value to that. Like I've noticed I'm a people pleaser, and so like getting negative comments, getting negativity in this,
Yeah.
like it hit hard. And then I think this transition to video, I felt like, oh, like people don't love my work as much. It was all these questions that I was in my head of just feeling like I didn't belong, maybe in a way. And there was just a question as to where things were going for me.
Do you think that ties back into where you started this conversation talking about how, maybe you didn't belong in terms of what your sister was doing and what the family
Yeah.
dynamics or your social dynamics, where people were pursuing these like more validated paths?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I think I think I still believed the path I was on was the one. Like I didn't feel like there's
Yeah.
anything else I should be doing, but I just felt like the industry around me has changed so much that I didn't know what I should be doing. I
Mm.
was like dabbling like within that period of those couple of years, like it was like COVID, and then end of 2020 into 2021 was like the NFT crypto boom. So I'm like, same with jumping on TikTok, I jumped straight into NFTs. And I've noticed this pattern of like new technology coming along, and I'm like early into it. And I'm very proud of myself for thinking like that and finding a way to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think I give myself enough credit for it. But when I look back, like crushed through NFTs, did some amazing stuff. Then I kind of relaunched my courses again because I thought maybe that would be the value. They didn't really do so well. I guess I was dabbling in things, and I was spread
So
myself.
you were reaching for life, like
Yeah,
while you were
I'm like
lost.
reaching for things. I'm like, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's
Yeah.
this. And it brought me full circle to like 2023, where I'm like, it's been staring me and like it's been staring at me the whole time. Like Jacob Media has been a thing since the beginning of me leaving Beautiful Destinations, and I have always put value in having genius people around me. Like, why am I not formalizing that into a creative agency where I know one of my skills is connecting with people?
Mm.
I know one of my skills is bringing in brand opportunities and stuff. Like, I don't need to be the one that shoots video. I don't need to be the one that does everything. And that's like that like early entrepreneurial mindset where you feel like you have to do everything,
Yeah.
to then suddenly realizing like I'm trying to do all these different things. Like I need to take it all off my plate.
Delegate.
Yeah, I need to.
Yeah.
Some things I need to just stop doing entirely. Other things I need to hand off. And for Jacob Media, it's like, cool. Let me focus on my strengths. Let me put. Here are my fucking 10 things that I'm amazing at. Everything else, hand off.
Okay. So I want to, you mentioned something that I think is really important, at least for me personally. When you had this awareness of this like vicious cycle, I guess, of like grabbing at things, shiny objects, like
Yeah,
let me take a crack at it. And I'm sure you did well on some of them, but what what breaks that cycle? Is it stillness? Is it, did you take time for yourself? Because you, to me, obviously, I know you personally, and everything I see you doing, you're constantly in movement. There's constant movement in your life. When were you able to get still? And maybe the answer is you didn't get still to figure this out, but was there a moment of stillness to really see that cycle happening in front of you, or was it just something that you learned through experience? How did you actually break it?
that's a brilliant question. I'm just trying to think through what that timeline was. And I would say partly early 2023, I'd been with Aggie, my now wife, for a couple of years. We'd
Hmm.
met a few years prior to that as well. And early 2023, we broke up. And our relationship was in just it was a mess. Like we lost our polarity. Things just weren't clicking. Like we're both focusing on our businesses. Like I'm in this questioning state of where I'm at in business. She's
Yep.
focusing on her thing and transitioning into, X, Y, and Z. So we broke up in this January and didn't get back together. And we weren't planning on getting back together, but we did in May. So I had this like 4 or 5 month period where, my life was like, oh, it's completely turned upside down. Like I knew this was the woman I was going to ultimately marry and have children with and all of that. But like at the time, I'm like, what the fuck has happened?
Yeah.
So I think like that put me on a much stronger path of inward reflection. I started working with a coach who both Aggie and I have worked with for many years now, called Adriana.
Mm.
And her whole concept is like simply like everything's a mirror. Everything's a reflection of how you're feeling on the inside. So anything that comes up for you, any conversation you have that triggers you, any of these things that trigger you in the world, are a reflection of something you don't love or aren't comfortable about within yourself. Like, and there's many other concepts she talks about through this kind of 5D consciousness that she references a lot. And she's brilliant at just really stopping letting you blame anyone else for your circumstance
Mm.
and really just making you take ownership for it. And I
Yeah.
think these moments and these calls and conversations with her just allowed me to see quite a few things. How I was doing some stuff because I thought it would please certain people, how I was doing other things because of maybe a more hollow reason of just purely financial gain. And like looking at what I did from that lens helped me see where I think more of my
Yeah.
strengths lied.
And so this breakup was almost like a catalyst, or your hand
For
was
a
forced to
huge
like
amount of
to
things.
to be like, yo, slow down for a second and take inventory.
Yeah.
of what's important.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm.
I was in the US. I'd only recently moved to the US. I wasn't really properly set up there. I didn't have like a good credit line. I had all these different things that like I kind of had security on when I was with Aggie as a partner who's, got a US passport and stuff like that. So like, I think I took a little bit of a back seat and didn't really take
Mm.
ownership of me and my life and really stepping into that role. So I think all these different things played a piece for me when I'm like, look back on that period of time, and it ultimately gave me this incredible clarity that then all of these things started working in amazing succession, that we got
Yeah.
back together. I had a much stronger plan. I dropped 90% of the things I was doing. I stopped doing online courses because I think the teaching element of me, at least for now, is not there. I didn't feel like this pull to want to teach, and it felt like a pull to earn money from teaching versus the feeling like I want to teach. I think there's a
Yeah.
differentiating factor
Yeah.
between the two, and I want to do something authentically versus do it just for the money. And I think so like that I stopped. I have a
That's a
clothing
huge
brand, and
shift, by the way.
yeah, and
Like,
it's like
I think just pausing on it, like not doing it for the money and like starting to do it for passion. I think we're starting to see such a shift of people taking inventory of that piece too.
yeah. I mean,
And
it's the
and
same as Jacob Media, the jobs we pick and what we want to do. Like
you learn to say no.
yeah, and it's
It's
scary
hard.
to
It's
say
hard.
no.
It's
It's
really hard.
really
Yeah.
hard to say
Especially
no.
coming from a fellow people pleaser. I'm like,
Yeah,
it's
like to
hard to say
to
no.
turn something down to anything that goes against the core belief that if you do something against what someone else wants, then they're gonna be disappointed, and that hurts. It's like that for me, like disappointing people has been like the crux of it. And I mean, there's stories in the last year that I have really helped heal that, and it's
Yeah.
still a process. But like I've been very much on a healing path of being comfortable with disappointing people,
Yeah. That is really powerful.
because ultimately, if I'm living on the opposite side of that, I'm just disappointing myself. And I have to start by disappointing other people, be comfortable with disappointing other people so that I can be confident in who I am and make my decisions from a place of like alignment,
Yeah. And you can tell, I mean, I feel like the projects you're taking now, the stuff you're working on now is very aligned to exactly what you want
Yeah,
versus doing it for the money and then resenting the project later
exactly.
and being like, fuck, why did I pick this up? Kind of like the online course where you had this like, yeah, we'll do the 5-year plan, unlimited access to me. And then you're like, shit, like I did that maybe
Regret.
partially for the money,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
you're like,
Yeah, you
fuck,
sell the
like,
bigger dream, and then it's like
yeah.
I get that people on that course are like, well, you did say lifetime access. And I'm like, yeah, you're not
Yeah.
wrong, but I'm like, oh god. And the same NFTs. Like I had this amazing run in the NFT space. Like I sold out a generative photography collection, which I built this whole crazy. Like I think it was like 6 million potential combinations of my images that pieced together, randomly generated through a piece of code. Every single one was unique, and I had no idea what the outputs would be. 1,111 pieces sold out in 14 minutes,
Wow.
made $1.1 million in 14 minutes. And I remember
Jeez.
distinctly
Yeah.
that I didn't feel it was good enough. And I didn't feel like I was proud enough of myself for this
Yeah.
moment. And it was such like, and Aggie was like, she was, we were in the room together as this whole thing sold out. And I didn't even give myself the grace of like how much I put in 10,000 hours to that.
Yeah.
It was insane. And one day I'd love to show you the Photoshop file that I have for this thing. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't enough. It didn't feel like it was
Well,
enough.
knowing you and who you
And
are today, I feel like if you had made that 1.1 million, not in 14 minutes, but maybe 14 months of a project you fucking loved,
yeah.
you would have been like, that's enough.
Yeah, I know. But well, the
Yeah.
funny thing was, it's like I loved the process of doing it. I was so invested in making this project, and it wasn't because I knew there was a massive financial potential gain from it. It was I was just loved the creativity of feeling like I was working on this thing that no one had done before. But I think at the end of it, it was like I then instantly went into comparison. I'm like, this is the collection. It's sold out like this, but something else that launched doing this did better, and minutes after it did this, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling like what I did was good enough. And I came back and I was hard on myself, and I'm just like, I can remind you, she's like, look what you just did. Like, it's actually insane, but I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
And then NFTs, like I continued doing it, and I lost the passion for it very quickly because that space as an artist, you're creating content, but all you're doing is trying to sell it. Like you're trying to sell it to the next person. So it felt just transactional. It felt like I'm thinking about everything I do from a how much can I sell this for
Yep.
versus doing it for the love of doing it. And I just was like, I don't need that.
So given that you've kind of passed this phase or chapter of understanding that you've picked at things that are trendy or hot or flash in the pan, and now you're on more of this aligned path, how do you keep yourself from going back to that? Because I think a lot of friends and professional people I've met, like the ones that have found awareness in these patterns, typically sometimes can fall back into it when the next, I mean, look, we have a new election, that just passed, like a new president. So many new things are now coming up into the fold where it could seem like, oh shit, I got to get on this trend. It's going to be the next big thing.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that, given that you have decided consciously to be like, I know those things don't serve me,
Yeah.
but they're definitely still in your periphery, right?
Absolutely.
How do you say no to those types of things? And what practices maybe
Yeah.
are you using that other people could use that are like, hey, like these are the things you check on. I'm taking inventory, whether it's day to day or week to week, mentally and physically and emotionally. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of things that I've been trying to do, and as you were speaking, I just remembered one thing, which I'll then answer that question, because from the last thing about the NFT thing, about 3 months after that, I got scammed and lost 90%
well, there
of
you
what I
go.
earned. And it was such an, and that's like, it
That's an
just scared,
energetic
that's
sign.
what
Yeah.
came round. It was this like, oh, it was like FTX and then a scam and this, and I'd practically lost all of it. And it was just like this, oh, huh. Like, look at that.
There's a
Like, I
sign.
wasn't
Yeah.
aligned with what I was doing, and then you don't get it. You don't get to
Yep.
keep it. It wasn't meant for me.
Yeah.
And anyway, so, I've been trying to go through a lot of different practices, and I've tried a lot of different things, and I think I've scaled back on stuff that I really know works for me. Like for me, when I wake up in the morning, I've been doing quite a few Joe Dispenza meditations. I really like that.
Visualizations almost.
Visualizations,
Yeah.
really, really good. I love now that Spotify has practically everything in all audiobooks all in one.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of it
Yeah.
personally, so I have
Yeah.
to have six
Yeah.
different apps. So
Yeah.
really enjoying that.
Do they have Joe Dispenza
Yeah, they
now?
have like
Because I used to
some
go to YouTube for that.
there's some
Which
really
is,
good Joe
yeah.
Dispenza ones. They mix from like about 11 minutes to
Mm.
25, 26 minutes long. So depending on kind of what I'm doing. But I like how he guides you through. Like for me, meditation was always a challenge to sit still and just be there. But to have someone that's kind of guiding you through this process, I've really enjoyed. And I think it's just helpful when your brain is so, expansive and creative in the morning. Like I have for many years just gone straight on my phone. I went straight on my phone. I went straight onto Instagram or into emails, and you're instantly playing catch up the moment you do that. And I've been trying to have a cleaner opening to my day, to start it from a place of ownership of my day versus how someone else having ownership of my day, because I'm like, oh, I forgot to do this and I forgot to do this. And that shift has been really helpful. I am affirmations have been huge. I think I started shifting so I wrote down maybe 50 different affirmations for me that I are aligned with my life, that start with I am, for me, stuff like when they could sound strange saying them out loud to people, they're not designed to be said out loud to
Mhm.
people in a conversation, versus saying them to yourself, and that belief in yourself that you're one of one, your perfection, you're and in alignment for wealth and prosperity and all these different things that for me, I think it's quite easy to fall into kind of a lower vibration of energy. You go on Instagram, you compare yourself to someone else, you look in the mirror and you don't feel like you want to do for some people. And, all these different ways in our society that's very easy to just feel less than. So
Mhm.
for me, starting the day and throughout the day, like listening to saying these affirmations to myself and truly believing them
Mhm.
shifts my energy. Like I
Yeah.
have, yeah, I'm a magnet for success and for wealth. I have everything I need. My wealth is always increasing. I've got a whole list of them on my phone. I could probably lead
Fucking
half of
love
them out
that.
for you. Like
Yeah.
they're amazing. I get to the end of it and I'm like, yeah, like I am healthy. I am, my wife is healthy. My family is healthy. Like it's just believing what you're
And you know what's
saying.
so
It's
crazy?
so
Literally
powerful.
while you're talking, I think, and maybe this is obvious, but I'm just realizing this, that especially coming from a background of people pleasing, which by definition is really you allowing other people's energy to kind of determine how you feel, which therefore means that they're creating your identity for you.
100%.
So literally what you're doing every morning is, again, maybe obvious, but you're just reframing to make sure that you define your identity in the morning, so that you can't go through the day and people would just steal from Jacob
Yeah.
and make him
And
who
tell you who
he
you
want.
are, and then you suddenly believe it. And you're like,
And
well,
then at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, I'm not enough.
yeah.
Yeah, no shit, because you started with this canvas that was open to interpretation
Yeah.
instead of defining, what you know and believe about
And I
yourself.
think
I think
one of the
that's special.
interesting things I heard, and I've blanked on the name of the guy that said it, but he reminds you that it's like if someone called you the name that's not your name, it doesn't even phase you because you know that's not your name. Like if I said, "Hey Liam," you're like, "That's not my name."
Yeah.
Like I'm good. Like doesn't bother me. But like if I
Because the
like
name is
say
such a
something like
core part of your
yeah,
identity
just
that you
like
know
that's
is
you know who
true.
you are,
Yeah.
you know who
That's
I am, and it's like suddenly it's like then when someone says something else and you believe it, it's like well no,
yeah.
have the same conviction in who you are in your name to then when someone else says something like have the resilience to know who you are that that's not you.
That's so powerful,
And I
dude.
think it's
Yeah.
like of course there's the other argument to that where it's like oh when someone says something and it bothers you, it's because part of you believes that it to be true, which I understand as well. If someone says that, says you, oh, you're not smart enough for this. There's this wound in me that says that, but it's just an opportunity to let that come up and to then work through it. So it's like, I love the fact it's like, yeah, if someone calls me a different name, it doesn't even bother me. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm
That
good.
is
So
such a
that's the
powerful
power that I
framework
want to have in my mind
for anything.
for everything.
Yeah.
So that's been a
So
big thing.
that's one of the, so you got meditation, you get
No,
your
the affirmations.
affirmations.
I have a few rituals in the morning. I mean, it sounds silly, but like, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I feel like it's played a role in how I feel. My coffee routine
Yeah.
is perfect.
Yeah.
I love my coffee routine.
What is it?
And no, I bought myself my favorite coffee machine. I have this whole like 7-step
Yeah.
process, all these little gadgets and things. And for me, just like when I've woken up,
I know
done
you're
a
making the latte
meditation,
art yourself
you're
too.
doing the
Yeah,
latte
yeah.
art. This is
Yeah.
like this creativity from that, which has been really, really powerful. But jokes aside, like I've been really trying to just start my day with less tasks on my plate. Like figuring out like what are the 3 biggest things I could do today that are going to drive the most value for everything I'm doing. Like I can make a list that is really fucking long. We all can as entrepreneurs. There is a never ending number
There's
of
so
things
much you can be
that we can be doing. And a couple of books I've read recently. First, 10x is easier than 2x and Who Not How, both by Dan Sullivan. Fantastic books. Who Not How, who can do it for me versus how can I do it myself? Delegation, finding A players to do the things that you do that ultimately will do things better than you will, and take it off your plate. That's a huge part of it. Instead of figuring out, oh, I have to do it all myself. And then the 10x is easier than 2x is kind of what I was talking about before of this 80-20, taking off the 80% of things that bring the least amount of value, because typically in any business and anything we're doing, there's the 20% that really brings the most amount of revenue, opportunity, and doubling down on that 20%.
Yep.
That's kind of the 10x is easier than 2x rule. It's like most people look at business as like, cool, I earned, I don't know, $1 million last year. I want to earn 2 million this year. So that means I have to work twice as hard.
Yep.
Instead of thinking, cool, no, I want to earn 10 million this year. How do I bring in the people around me, take off all these other things from my plate? And actually, ultimately, it becomes easier to make that 10 million versus working twice as hard to make less.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been those have been really principles that I've taken into 2025 as to how can I look at Jacob Media from just a 10x perspective.
Yeah.
Whereas I've always subconsciously been in this 2x because you assume that's then you do 2x and you do 2x and you do 2x and suddenly you're here, but it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like I mean, better than anyone building an incredibly successful business. It's like, it doesn't mean you have to work exponentially harder and more.
I think we're so past of like, and it's almost like a redefinition of everything you and I probably grew up seeing, and all these videos that we were inspired by the hustle, the constant grind.
I'm literally about to get my hustle tattoo crossed out in a red line because it aligned with me back in the day when I'm like, I did this after doing my first workshop. And I was so proud, me and one of my best friends, Jeremiah, and did this workshop. We worked crazy hard back to back on jobs around it. And I'm like, I was in this like hustle mentality.
Yeah.
And I got this tattoo, which I look at and I'm just, it was a phase of life, but it doesn't align with how I approach life now.
And I think it made sense when we were just at the mercy of like human capacity. And now I think we're entering an era of like back to human fundamentals, right? Like,
Absolutely.
and it's funny that it's so crazy that you have that tattooed, but
I know.
Noah, who's, the founder of Platform and a great mentor to me, like he grew up with this hustle culture, right? And I think we've together helped redefine that. And with this internal slogan now is who cares wins. And it's almost like this care aspect. So if you want to really 10x and you care about the people you're bringing in, you care about like that North Star vision, and you care enough about, you're in the service business to a degree, so you care enough about your clients,
Yep.
you're going to win. And that's more important than sitting on the hamster wheel and just working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then you have no time to take inventory of anything you just
Exactly.
talked about,
And then
which
it's like,
brought
that's
you
also
to,
not about life.
yeah,
Like when you think about
yeah,
what the enjoyment of life is, like, I don't want to be working from 7 till 7, 8 till 8, like doing these crazy long shifts. It's like, no, that's not the point. Like, I
yeah,
want to foster an amazing relationship with my wife. I want to be around for having our first baby and having the time to be able to do that, and to have structured my life in a way that our business is growing exponentially, but I have given myself the freedom and the time to have the space in order to enjoy life. And I
yeah.
think I've done an incredible job at being able to do that. Like the passions I have, whether it's skydiving or mountain biking, or just I've traveled more than typically most people would. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. And I don't want that to slow down. I mean, it has, but I don't want it to slow down in terms of the space I give myself to do that, because I think it's so important. And ultimately, again, it comes back to this book that I was reading, the 10x is easier than 2x. Like, as people that run their own businesses, creative people, entrepreneurs, like, you need more time off
Mm,
to perform at your best. You need that. He says in this book, he's a multi-billionaire. He takes 180 days a year off. And those days off are completely
yeah,
disconnected days. Maybe they're doing something that he loves to do.
yeah.
Maybe he goes surfing. Maybe he does this. Maybe he learns a new skill, but it's from a place of not feeling like he's going to pick up his phone. That's half a year of time, because he knows the other days that he's working in then has them. It's basically free days, buffer days, and focus days. The focus days are 100% energy into building the really core aspects of the business that are driving it forward.
Hmm.
The buffer days are for admin, home things, things that need to get done, which
Yeah.
need that time and focus. And the other days are free days. And it's like, I know that if I'm working back to back on a creative project, my level of skill by the end of it is significantly diminished. I don't have that same capacity to come up with a creative idea, to
Hmm.
work in the same format. Like, but if I take time off and I go between things, like I feel that innate creativity inside me much more powerful than it would be if I was trying to squeeze it all in
Some of
constantly.
my best ideas, and we did this really unique exercise at the end of last year where we looked at all of the businesses and brands we work with and our quote unquote biggest ideas of the year, because I haven't read that book, but it sounds very similar to like, hey, if you knock out the big ideas, your business will grow that 5 to 10x, versus the blocking and tackling that you just need to put a list in front of an employee and say, hey, you're responsible for all these
Yeah,
things. When we took inventory, most of our big ideas were executed in times and moments where there was no meeting schedule. There was no, hey, this is the goal this month to figure out that you need to execute a big idea. It was
exactly.
us walking down an aisle in Erewhon and thinking, holy shit, what happens if this ends up in a target? And it's these unique connections that can't be made when you're on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, exactly. You
And
don't
it's,
have the capacity to do it.
yeah.
You really don't. And that it's like that's why it's so integral to give yourself the space to do that. And also then like it ties into the who not how of like giving someone the autonomy and the control to go and execute on something that you need them to. Like I've noticed like hiring people for Jacob Media and having full-time people, like the freedom it's brought to me to focus on the things that I know I'm good at. And while I'm handing it off to someone that is expertly skilled in the thing that I'm giving them, it's like that has been game changing for me. And I think I'm still, I feel like I'm earlier on this path than you guys, obviously with a significantly bigger team. But like, I can just already see by bringing in a player, everyone is staying in their lane of genius, the results are exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
And the time that people have to do things are, we have a lot more.
Yeah. No, it's beautifully said. And honestly, I think some of those, like, I might even take away some of that and definitely pick up one of these books, because as,
Yeah.
and it all goes back to that important piece that I was talking about, which is, you've made a transition in your life. You've met the inflection point, you've surpassed it, and you're on a journey of growth now. And I think these maintenance practices, whether they're more like how you bring them into your professional life versus your time with your wife and hopefully kids and all that. I think it's so important. But I want to transition into what I think has led me to believe you're so truly magnetic is just your eye and how that's going to change in these next 5 to 10 years because you've defined, your ability to bring what's in reality onto this digital format in such a beautiful way. And I'm obsessed with cars and design and aesthetic and all of these like beautiful things that are truly magnetic visually, right?
Yep.
And you're
Yep.
drawn to them. And you guys did this amazing thing on your wedding with the whatever. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But it's so incredible. And how do you stay ahead of the curve? And are you scared given what is going on in the industry of because I think it's not just your field, and that's the crazy part, right? But I think you'd have a good perspective on it. Like, even in the world of brands, which is my world, or the world of music, or anything else, where there's literally intelligence being made that is supposed to, surpass ours. How do you keep the humanness in what you're doing without getting caught up maybe with this quote unquote flash in the pan or grabbing at the next AI trend and maybe grounding yourself in that? And maybe the answer is you're not and you're actually going the other way. But
Or
I'd
I'm
love
just
to.
terrified.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm actually so curious. I mean, photography is the epitome of capturing beauty and magnetism. And that's in a way being replicated.
Yeah.
How are you navigating that piece?
Ah, at this present time, for me, I'm embracing every aspect of what I can within something like AI, for example. Like I, I'm using the tools where I can for us to drive forward our business, to simplify life in ways that we can. Like as a photographer, like I, I take significantly less photos than I did 5 years ago. I think the photos I take and the time that I put into each one of those, the end product I actually think is significantly higher. Like in the past I've taken, photos that have gone mega viral, perspectives that have never been seen before, travel photos that are just like I truly believe are extraordinary photos that I have been fortunate to shoot and create. But I've taken significantly less in order to, for one, I guess, focus more on other aspects of my skill set. And I feel like I'm multi-skilled in that way where, yes, I'm a photographer, but I believe I'm a fantastic connector and relationship
Mm.
builder and all these other things for the business that I want to continue exploring. But within AI, it's like there are so many tools that I get to use as a photographer with AI, which I'm so happy about. Like my process has become quicker and more efficient thanks to that. In business with, ChatGPT and all these other platforms to simplify our workflow has been, for me personally, amazing. I think I'm very interested to see where the course of the next 5 years goes. I've noticed that my eye for design, for photography, and for this stuff that I have, I've typically used it for photography, but that eye is expanded beyond photography for me. And that's what I think is really exciting. Like I'm not just limited by the camera. And maybe in a way I felt like that was all I was going to do. And now I'm expanding that.
Yeah, what does that mean?
So small little things at the moment, but so I launched a clothing brand and I realized it's called Dreamland. And the last
Yeah.
maybe year has been a bit slower than I expected it to. And I don't know if I'm going to continue on that path. But what I loved about it and the thing that I think I missed with photography was I never had anything physical. Like
Yeah.
everything I did was digital. I launched an online course, digital. I launched presets, digital, photos, digital. There was nothing tactile that I could have in my hands to feel and to feel like I've built something physical. So that was a big part of it. And since then, I've done a few things like, wedding, you mentioned it. Like for me and for Aggie, my wife, like coming up with this production was us putting our creative skills together and building something that ultimately we weren't building it to go viral. Our wedding video on Instagram did 102 million views. It did like
102.
103 million views. Like that for a reel. Like it's insane. Like
Yeah.
5 million likes. Like it was truly insane. But I know it was a combination of our creative inputs coming together to build something that we both truly cared about. we've then done other things like around the wedding, like I designed hats and did these custom hats for like
Yeah.
the groomsmen and the bridesmaids. I did my 30th birthday in December was a thing called Kitchen Club that you
Yeah.
were
No,
invited to, but you were
I know. I
out of
know.
LA, which was an epic like boiler
Yeah.
room style DJ thing in our kitchen that I did all of the branding for and all of this. So it's like I've noticed
That was really
myself.
cool, by the way,
I
even just
loved
from
it.
the content.
And
Like,
if you're around next Friday,
yes.
we're doing another one
All right.
as an LA Fires
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
fundraiser.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
I'll give you the
Yeah. Yeah.
details. But what I'm getting at is I think that I have stopped limiting myself to feeling like I'm just a photographer, and I have expanded, I guess, the creative expression of what I feel like I can do. And I'm not limiting myself just to one particular medium. And that for me has been super, super powerful because I think it's one of the things that kept me a little trapped back to the video side of things and not feeling like I could do it. Like, yeah, I can shoot video, I can direct video, I can do it all. Yes, there's better people to do it, so I find those people. But like for me on a personal level, like I'm just looking to figure out how I can really expand the vision I have for my photography, but in other fields. And that physical
It's almost
product
like how can you
aspect
bring
has
it
been
to
like,
life now?
yeah, like I love
When
it.
you,
Like hosting events, bringing people together has been really fun. And it's something that I didn't think I would love as much as I have, but these little explorations into there has been epic. And so I'm excited to see how the passion I've had for photography and that continues to be there will allow me to unlock other doors in other creative fields. I just started to DJ, another thing. Like I love it. It's so fun. It's just like another get yourself fully
I love
invested.
all the
Can't think
things
of
that you've picked literally have been it's and I think we mentioned it earlier in this conversation, like this fundamentals of humanity of like gathering, connection, music, physical formats, right? This room, this table, like
visuals, like
building
feelings,
your
tactile
clothing
stuff. Yeah,
company.
absolutely.
And that's almost in a weird way. That's what I was literally while I was asking you the question of like, how are you diversifying away from what maybe AI will take over? I think you kind of nailed exactly what I've been spending a lot of time on too is how do you bring that form back into the
Real
physical
life.
world?
Like we're all
Yeah.
on our phones, we're on Instagram. Like everything we see on here is just like we're consuming digital stuff.
Yeah.
And like I think there is this freedom and excitement of like bringing people together. Like, it's a random reference, but the reason I did Kitchen Club and did this like boiler room thing is because like the music scene in general is changing. For example, like no one likes to go clubbing anymore. Like no one has these like super
Dude,
drunk night outs and this. It's
drinking's
like
on the
big
too. Yeah.
tables, all of that. Like people want like curated epic experiences because no one's stopped loving dancing. Everyone loves to dance, or a lot of people do, right? And people want to have a really good dance, but there isn't really these curated spaces for it. So I was like, that's what I get to do. And I think it's just like these different ways of bringing people together and doing things in the real world,
Yeah.
in our reality, has been something that I think is an important part for where I'm going in the next few years, for sure.
I love it, man. And I want to tie it back into our world a little bit because I know I have a lot of brand founders and the community of brand founders that I think are exploring how to be magnetic and attract, new ways of connecting with their consumer. I wonder if any of the things you were saying could be helpful as they think about, move. It used to be like this. Okay, a D2C brand was visually different, right? Like in like 4 to 8 years ago was the heyday of like these brands don't look like old school brands visually, right? From visual, like you take a picture of an aisle, it was all super old school, a lot of words, all this, and then super into a format of like Warby Parker, Allbirds, Casper, and then that was a template for like the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Given that can all be so easily created, manipulated, and using data, AI could be like, oh, well, this is what your consumer likes, and this is what this woman likes, and you have to shape shift this way and that way. Again, digitalized, data driven. That's always going to be, I think, a part of a brand, this visual identity. But what are the ways they can complement that with maybe some of the ways you're thinking about? So if you have a brand campaign, because I
Yeah.
know you work on not just consumer product goods, but amazing businesses like Bugatti and
Yeah.
some elevated hotels, like how are they thinking about connecting with their consumer in a world that is so manipulated digitally? I could make my Holiday Inn down the street look like Four Seasons
Yeah.
online if I wanted to, right? Or I can manipulate it in any way. So, what are the ways you think that you'll be pulled into that world by helping brands recreate connection with their consumer in different ways? Maybe that's physical formats, maybe that's merch, maybe that's just a different way of visualizing. But do you have any like thoughts on on
Yeah,
that?
I mean, so obviously the core of our business is content creation,
Yeah.
right? So we build out creative campaigns for a breadth of different brands, a mixture of social, commercial content, and it really varies across industry. We find ourselves automotive, luxury, lifestyle, travel. And you mentioned Bugatti, and I think it's a really interesting one to mention, because a brand like Bugatti, it's like they don't need Instagram. They don't need social media. Like, they are not posting on Instagram for someone to go and go, ha, today's the day I buy a Bugatti because of this post. Like, if you're going to buy one of those cars, you've known for a long time that that's what you want to buy. So their marketing is inspiring a generation that's 15 years away from buying one. They're doing Instagram and they're doing these different platforms
They're in it for the
because
long run.
they
Yeah.
know that they are inspiring some 10-year-old that eventually is going to be a multi-millionaire, billionaire that is able to afford one of those cars. They don't know who it's going to be, but they're doing that for
But that's where the
the long run.
marketing's positioned
And
to.
that's what their
Yeah.
position
Yeah.
is. And I think it's like, so the content we create is this very ultra inspiring, exciting content for them. For other brands, I think it is bridging this gap between things feeling exciting and elevated and futuristic and really, but also grounding people back to what feels authentic. Like, hotels now are shifting away from crazy exciting activities of like loads of adrenaline to slowing down and
Yep.
doing more
Almost like
wholesome
as an escape
experiences and
from
like
reality.
exactly. So it's
Yeah.
like their brand, a lot of hotels like Marriott Bonvoy, we do a lot of work with, like they have this whole nurture tent pole, which is all focused around nurture and what nurture means to you. And we've built out the strategy for helping them tell the nurture story. And nurture could be, for someone, hiking, but for someone else, it's literally getting a foot massage and having their eyes closed for an hour. And it's like that contrast is broad, but it's bringing it back into this human feeling of grounding. And I think with how much people are disconnected from the real world by being on social media and being on these platforms and spending less and less time in the real world, I think a lot of brands are finding ways to get their consumers back into the real world. And that's what I think we're trying to do a lot of as well in the campaigns that we create, is connecting the two of how we show products or experiences, but bringing them back into reality.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of stuff is done with this idea of, inspiring people, but taking it a little bit too outside of the realm of real and not giving people the context of reality. So
I think
that's where we're at.
We can end on that note from a conversation perspective, because I think that is just, there's so much meat on the bone with that last point of building brands are physical.
Yeah.
Marketing them back into physical formats is almost the new way to reach
relating
your consumer,
it to
right?
reality.
And
I think it's such an important part of content. It's like to allow people to feel like there's just, it comes back to the physical product aspect, to feel like it's there, it's genuine, and it's not just this fantasy digital thing that like we all get so sucked into.
yeah.
I don't know.
Dude, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. It's amazing, man. And I really appreciate you coming out and spending this
It's
time
been
with
great.
me.
This
Is
is
there anything
amazing.
else that you have in your chest about Jacob, the world of content creation, anything else?
No, I mean, I'm really excited with where we're going with Jacob Media.
Yeah.
Like, I truly think what we get to create and the brands we get to work with and the ideas that we have for our brands and partners is we are doing an incredible opportunity to just change the face of content as I see it. We've coined ourselves as a creative non-agency because for me, I feel like big agencies, there's a lot of fluff and a lot of noise and meetings about meetings and all of this chaos. And I want to be the
10x, not 2x.
the in-house, we're your in-house team, but without the overhead. Like, really feel like we're a connector to a brand, to feel like they have people in their corner, authentically small team, big vision. And that's kind of how we're approaching our business. So
Dude, I love it. I can't wait to see where this takes you, man. I appreciate you coming
Appreciate it.
here.
And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course.